Hello students, welcome back to e-learning. In this video, we will be discussing chapter 7, 8 and 9 of Swami and Friends by R.K. Narayan. Chapter 7, A New Arrival. Swami's mother has been in bed for 2 days and he misses the attention that she usually pays to him. He sees her lying in bed, looking unwell and speaking to her coldly. Thinking that she seems to be a different mother, his granny tells Swami that he will soon have a baby brother. But he is not excited about this news. Swami sleeps in granny's room, listening to people moving around throughout the night and seeing a female doctor entering his mother's room. Although Granny asks, they get no news of what is happening. Swami feels safe and comfortable with Granny and does not worry about what is happening to his mother. In the next day, the class grows restless during a boring class. Swami sits next to the P and tells him about the birth of his new brother early that morning. Swami tells the P that the baby is hardly anything and such a funny looking creature. The P laughs and tells Swami that the baby will grow up quickly. Next chapter, chapter 8, Before the Examination. 2 weeks before his April school exams, Swami notices that his father is becoming more strict about making him study. He pesters Swami frequently, eventually pointing out that Swami will have to be in a different class from his friends if he fails the exam. At that point, Swami listens to his father and begins to study harder. All of Swami's classmates and friends are overwhelmed by the pressure of the upcoming exams. Mani is particularly worried and attempts to get information about the exam questions from the school clerk, who is rumored to know everything. He bribes the clerk with food, and although the clerk is pleased, he tells Mani that he doesn't know anything about the test questions. Mani persists, and eventually the clerk gives him advice about what to study, despite not actually knowing what will be on the exam. Mani is pleased with the information he gets from the clerk and shares his knowledge with Swami. Swami arrives home feeling bored and disappointed, and is disappointed that his granny doesn't feel like talking to him. He goes to look at his brother, who is now 6 months old. Swami now finds his brother charming and loves every inch of him. However, the baby is asleep and Swami, even more bored, wishes that his father would let him go out to play with Mani. Swami tries to study a map of Europe and wonders about the people who live there and about how the people who make maps know the shapes of countries. He thinks that perhaps they look down from a high place to see the shape. He eventually finishes his map and his father comes home to compliment him on his work, which Swami feels is worth all his suffering. 2 days before the exam, Swami makes a list of everything he will need for the exam and is disappointed that he can only think of 5 things, thinking that he had never known that his wants were so few. Swami makes his list longer and more complicated and then brings it to his father, who is busy working. Swami tries to go away and not interrupt him, but his father hears him at the door and calls him in, demanding to see the paper he is holding. Swami's father calls his list preposterous and tells Swami to take supplies from his desk instead. Although Swami gets most of what he needs, he is said not to be able to go and buy everything on his list. As he leaves his if his father's office, his father asks him to move the baby out of the hall so that his father won't have to hear the baby crying. Chapter 9. School breaks up. Swami exits his classroom after taking his final examination. He waits outside, worrying because he turned in his exam 20 minutes early while most of the other students were still working. He reflects on the exam questions and feels especially confident about the last question, which involved explaining the moral of a story about a man who is fooled by a tiger offering him a gold bangle. Swami wrote a simple single line answer. Love of gold bangle costs one's life. Then he sat restlessly pretending to revise his work until he saw a few other boys leaving, at which point he did the same. I think you can connect whenever you are writing exam and you have already finished. You don't want to be the first one to move out from the classroom, from the exam hall, so you wait for somebody else to move or take the step first, then you get the courage to walk out. Okay, so Swami is in that shoe at present. So the exam ends and the rest of Swami's class comes down outside. Swami asks a classmate what he wrote for the last question, and the classmate reveals that he wrote a full page. Swami tells Rajam and Shankar about the classmate, and they reply that they wrote only half or three-quarters of a page for the last question. Swami tells them that he also wrote half a page, fooling even himself into thinking he actually did so. The rest of Swami's friends arrive and they discuss their feelings about the exam and their excitement that the school is now over for the time being. 15 minutes later, the whole school goes back into the hall where everyone is laughing and joking, even the teachers. The mission school headmaster announces that the school will be closed until the 19th of June and tells the students that he hopes they will continue to read over the vacation. The assembly ends with a short prayer. At the end of the prayer, the boy begins tearing up paper, smashing ink bottles and destroying whatever they can find. Swami sticks close to money at first, afraid of the rumor that enemies stab each other on the last day of school. Even though he doesn't think he has any enemy, then as the excitement builds, Swami joins in the destruction and even pours in ink bottle over his own head. Mani calls jokingly to a policeman to arrest the rowdy boys and then threatens to steal the turban of the school peon and dye it with ink. The peon breaks up the crowd of boys. And this is the end of this video. Thank you for watching. Do continue and wait for the next video where we will be discussing the remaining chapters. Thank you.